Do you have low ankle bones, a high shoe, or a stiff shoe that bashes into your ankle bone? Please let me know. I'd love to know I'm not the only person with this problem. But I do have a solution. So tonight I'm going to look at this pair of sneakers and how to lower them to accommodate my low ankle bone. No more pain. The process involves cutting them down, and it will look a little bit frayed and messy depending on the fabric of the sneaker. Hopefully, you can preserve the collar. In this picture, you'll see that I've cut around the join or the seam line of the collar and lowered the actual shoe. But sometimes you can't get the collar to remain intact, and you might cut into the collar. So long as you get it low enough for your ankle bone, either or are going to work. Now, the cut down is probably the hardest job you'll do because sneakers have an outer coating of plastic usually, and the inner layers, you've got some layers of material, some layers of lining, lots of layers of glue, and some seams. Now, the glue makes the seams really quite rigid and hard. So you're going to see me using a variety of tools to get this job done. Right now, I'm using some wire cutters from my jewelry kit, and that helps me get through the hard plastic bits. I also use these robust kitchen scissors. You'll see me with some sewing scissors, which I try just to use on the fabric to neaten things up. And I also use some surgical scissors because they're sharp and they're small and easily maneuverable. The hardest job is starting, and that is where you have to make a hole into the shoe so you can get your cutting implements in. And then you just cut around your ankle bone shape that you've tested out by putting the shoes on and standing. You have to stand, you have to walk, because that changes how the shoe lands on your foot. Once you know where your ankle bone is hitting, you'll have a good idea of what kind of a U shape you need to cut out to accommodate your ankle bone. And then you use whatever implements that you can get your hands on to achieve that cutting out job. I try and get my cut smoothly up into this seam line. And that's what I'm just working on at the minute. There's a lot of pulling with your fingers, and there's also cutting off sections of material and sections of foam, and there's also pulling apart of the fabric so that you're separating layers of foam, fabric, and glue. The other part I need to get right is, because my ankle bone is quite forward, I need to get it nicely cut out right up until the lacing system. Now here you can see what I mean about layers of stuff, and we have to excavate the foam padding. Excavating and pulling out that foam padding, so you just got that material there, is going to allow you, once you've got also the cutout, to fold over the collar that you freed up. Lots of layers there. Oh, dum-dum-dum. Let's do a little bit more cutting out because I don't have it good enough yet and low enough yet. By the way, you should be trying these shoes on. So now you feel confident that you've got your cutout low enough and you've pulled out enough foam. What you've got is empty space where you can actually push that collar down and make that gap really quite large so you don't have anything that's going to bash into your ankle bone. The bad news is you have 2 feet, and so now you've got another shoe to do. And you might be trying to get the other shoe to have equidistant cut out to the first shoe you did. That's a good plan, but please also remember your feet may not be the same. You must be trying on your shoes and making sure that you have cut down and excavated enough of the gap to accommodate the ankle bones on both of your feet. So I'm just doing the same thing here on the second shoe, cutting it down. I have a forward ankle bone, so I really need to work at the forward section where the lacing bit is. And once it's all excavated, I also do a check just so I have some similarity in my measurements. And now we need to sew down that collar. As you can see, I've used white thread. Use the same colour thread as that inner collar, and you'll see that it won't obviously contrast, especially if you're looking at a distance. This one that's on my foot, I used any old stitch just to get the job done, but right now with this white and peach colour, I'm going to use a quasi blanket stitch because I think it has a more decorative effect, especially if you can do it neatly, and it has a locking down factor that I really enjoy. So I'm just pushing in my needle here so that the end of my thread is going to be covered up in the gap of the collar joining the shoe. Now the trick to neat sewing, neat hand sewing, is to try and get your stitches all of the same placement and the same width and the same length. I'm going to use my jewellery pliers. You can use any pliers. And that's just going to help you get through the toughness of this fabric and glue and whatever there is there. The second stitch is going to go through the shoe and the collar. Again, I'm going to have to use the pliers. I'm trying to get that piercing of the needle to come out in exactly the same height on the collar as my other stitch. And then I open up the loop and pull my needle through. This is that locking factor. Just gently tugging that first stitch closed. Now I need to pierce again through the shoe and through the collar, hopefully at the same points emerging from the collar as the previous stitch. Going to have to use my pliers. You can see this is quite a slow process and it's quite tough on your hands. Now I take the loop of my thread, put my needle through the loop, hold it so it doesn't snarl, and gently tug that down. Next stitch, through the shoe and through the collar with the help of our pliers. Find the loop, needle through the loop, and tug down. Same again, through the shoe, through the collar, use your pliers. Open the loop around the needle and pull it closed. And yes, that's my little cat, Kato, who always wants to accompany me, make an appearance under my arm there. Keep doing your threading. Open the loop, needle through the loop, lock down by tugging closed. These little bits I'm finding I don't need the pliers as much, but you get the idea. Use your pliers when you need to. And you're going to go all the way around that shoe. You can see here that it's actually already starting to flatten out because we're pulling that collar across and down. There's no padding in that bit, so it's going flattened, and we've made that shoe lower. So I'm going to do this stitch all the way around. Here we go, you can see it very clearly here, that flattened out shape. So we're getting room around our ankle bone. As I was saying, keep going all the way around. You'll hit some tough spots, particularly if you're up around the lacing system because there's more plastic there. So you are going to use, obviously, your pliers. And I like to go back around my loop So I do a second pass. So I did from front to back, and now I've gone from back to front. Now I'm going from front to back. Right now I am finishing off. I've got 2 passes of thread there. I think that makes it more secure. It hides more fraying material and just makes it more secure. And I'm just going to finish off here by putting in a couple of little knots. And if you're wondering, I did use a normal needle here. Sometimes I've used milliner's needles. They can snap if they're too thin, but milliner's needles are very sharp and very fine, so there is that advantage. I've just used a regular needle. All right, this is our finished 2 passes of stitching around that collar, joining it to the shoe that has been cut down. And yeah, I lied. I haven't got my 2 knots at the end yet, so just finishing off my 2 knots so I can finish and snip off. And there's a finished sewn shoe. Let's have a look at both shoes together. If your stitching is not perfect, do not worry. You have 2 feet and no one can look at them at the same time. Unfortunately, I also have blisters. And Kato thinks that my hands should be used for this purpose in any case. Just in case you had a tough sew, you've got a couple of minutes to relax here with my cat. And of course, I hope that that tutorial where we've cut down some shoes to accommodate ankles gives you shoes you can wear without pain. Join us next time, where I'm going to take these very same shoes and jazz them up. Don't forget to subscribe and enjoy your comfy life. Oh, and back to my first question. Who amongst you has problems with shoes banging into your ankles? Please tell me about it in the comments. See you next time.